Let's begin with the August 1st planned protest, where the federal government has called an emergency meeting for today in response to the planned nationwide protest scheduled for August 1st. The meeting, being attended by ministers and secretary to the government of the Federation and special advisors, aims to address the grievances driving the protests. President Bola Tinubu has appealed to the organizers to shelve the protest and give his administration more time to implement people-oriented programs. The planned protest, sparked by rising living costs and economic hardship, has gained traction on social media. The government has urged youths to abandon the plan, describing it as ill-advised. Minister of Information Mohammed Idris conveyed the president's plea, saying Mr. Tinubu takes the protesters' grievances seriously and is committed to ensuring a better future for Nigeria. In the meantime, the Inspector General of Police, Kayode Egbetokun, has urged citizens to avoid the planned protest, stating that the proposed nationwide protest was ill-advised. Egbetokun's statement was made in response to social media campaigns rallying for a nationwide protest scheduled for August 1st due to the economic hardship in the country. Now, speaking during a meeting with commissioners of police in Abuja, he noted that the country has experienced violent protests with severe consequences. The IG added that last EndSARS protest worsened crime rates and insecurity in several parts of the country. While he acknowledged the right to peaceful protest as enshrined in the Constitution, the IGP said the force must ensure that these protests do not snowball into violence or disorder. Joining us to discuss more on the planned protest is a public affairs analyst, Jelili Adebi. Hello, Jelili. Thank you so much for joining me at this time.
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity to have the conversation.
All right. Now, Jelili, with all indications, do you think that the planned protests will hold despite President Tinubu's appeal to the organizers, especially given the current public sentiment and the traction that the protest has gained on social media?
Well, from all indications, from speaking with colleagues, being involved in different civil society organization ecosystem spaces, there is a strong indication that the protest is going to hold. And what I will encourage the government to focus on is working with the organizers of the protest to ensure that it is a safe and peaceful protest. Because protests constitute the heartbeat of any living democracy. Without protest, democracy is at risk. And that is why it is important that every time people are leveraging the streets to agitate for improvement in the well-being and overall living condition of the people, what the government should do is to ensure that the protests are not hijacked and that we work with communities where the protests will be taking place to ensure that they create a supportive and enabling environment for the protests to be peaceful. And at the same time, it is incumbent on the government to hold protesters accountable to the ability to organize a peaceful protest. And what I understand from the government perspective is that there is no government that will give an express approval, especially in the global south, for protests to take place on issues such as this.
Okay.
And that is why what the government is doing is to play the game of psychology.
All right, Jelili, speaking of approval now, the federal government has actually called an emergency meeting to address the protest. Now, in this meeting, what measures do you expect to be discussed or even implemented, during the meeting, especially if, the organizers decide not to step back on the protests?
I do not speak for the government. I'm not for their payroll. And I've not been consulting for the government on issues of governance in recent times. However, from what we've been reading on the pages of newspaper and what we've been hearing from our colleagues who are working with the current government, it also appears to me that what they are trying to do is to present some facts as to why the protest should not proceed. Whatever they present to the organizers of the protest, I still think it's not going to prevent the protest from taking place. Because the protest is about the living condition of the street. The street is in a state of frustration. If the government is smart enough, the solution is not to bottom up what is about to explode. The solution is to allow the protest to take place. In that way, people will be able to ventilate their frustration. When you bottle up a frustration, when it explodes, it gives no conversation. And that is why I'm advising those that will be facilitating the conversation with some of the organizers of the protest to focus their attention on what needs to be in place for the protest to be peaceful.
Okay.
If they focus on something else and people mobilize themselves to the street, then we might have lost the opportunity to ensure that the protesters ensure that the protest is accountable. I, for one, am an advocate for peaceful protest. If there are some sections of the organizers of the protest that are claiming that they are going to burn down the properties of the public, then those ones need to be taken care of by the security. They need to be invited to discussion. But I want to emphasize this against the government and to our viewers that protests constitute the heartbeat of any living democracy.
All right, but the IG also referenced, the last NSAS protest and its aftermath. We all know what happened, there. What lessons do you think that these organizers or those who intend to go out for the protest can learn from the past protests in Nigeria? And, how do you think that these would inform the government and, law enforcement's approach to the upcoming planned protests?
As somebody who has leveraged the street severally as a union leader and as an opinion leader in the country, every single time we wanted to organize protests in the past, there was always a reference to a protest that was not peaceful. Ali must go protest at the University of Lagos was cited as not a peaceful protest and was used to discourage my leadership from mobilizing the students to protest some of the issues that needed to be given more attention by the leadership of the then Vice Chancellor of the University of Lagos. So the IG citing the issue of insight is just a classical play script that is expected from it. If it's not saying it, they will say that something is abnormal. What he's saying is the typical normal response from those that are in charge of the security apparatus of every country. What I think we need to learn from the NSAS is very simple. One, the government must play its role. In the case of NSAS, not enough was done by the government to provide an enabling environment for a peaceful protest. I condemn categorically all the meetings or the warnings that happened during the period of NSAS. Those were needless. Because every single time you go to the street, it is a privilege on the protesters to recognize the limitations of their rights. The right to protest is not the right to disrupt the peaceful conduct of other citizens' activities. That was the clearly stated. So I expect on the side of the organizers of the protester is to educate the people that are mobilized into the street about A to Z of a peaceful protest.
Okay.
Protests must never degenerate into disruption of peaceful conduct of other non-protesting citizens' activities. There are ways things can be done peacefully. And I believe that is a lesson that should be the talking point for those that are organizing the protest.
All right, well, thank you
Which
so
is also,
much, Jalili. Sadly, we'd actually have to wrap up here. Thank you so much for speaking to us on this.
yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity to come once again on your news channel to have the conversation about the protest. I
Thank
wish
you.
you the best. Thank you.
The leaders of the National Association of Nigerian Students and campus leaders in Lagos State held a press conference in support of the Lagos State government and their effort to promote better educational attainment. They spoke on the actions of the planned nationwide protest, which will take place August 1st, as an action they won't be a part of due to their trust in the current administration. Amidst calls for nationwide protests, non-indigenous communities in Borno State have opted for a different approach. Fearing the potential escalation of tensions and division, community representatives have voiced their strong preference for dialogue as a means of addressing grievances and promoting national progress. News Central's Umari Kirawa completes the story.
In public sphere is whether or not there will be protest, as has been widely touted, come the first week of August. The fact is, Nigerians are concerned about the high cost of living, from foodstuffs to petrol, among others. This is believed to have been a consequence of government policies on subsidy withdrawal, among others. Non-indigenous persons in Nigeria's northeast state of Borno on Tuesday converged to call for proactive measures to avoid tension in the country.
I will call on those people that are planning this strike and this protest to please forget it, to think of the repercussion may not be good. There was never a protest that ended well. In most cases, they turned out to be very bloody. When Kenya started, it was just like what they are going to do for an hour. Today, it has become a very serious disaster.
That maybe you think that you don't have father, you don't have mother, somebody will now call you to give you money so that you go and strike your city, which maybe along the line it may come back. So I'm pleading to Nigerians, please, let's join our hands together and pray for our nation.
These accumulated things, and in course of governance, there are bound to be potholes, and the government is trying to fill the potholes, which they did not create or did they cause. Sometimes natural things cause the situation. So in right parties, for them to pray and give everything to God.
They voiced their support for initiatives that promote understanding and harmony, urging fellow Nigerians to join hands in building a stronger, more cohesive society.
You see the sheer enormity of violence in Kenya. That country can never recover in the next 20 years. If you see the kind of buildings that has been destroyed. What happened in Libya? What happened in Tunisia? What happened in Sudan? What happened in Syria? There is no place that violence has taken place that it has ended peacefully the way it started. And after we have gone through this history of misery of the Boko Haram insurgency, are we ready again to be used as cannon fodder to cause problems? Because when this thing begins, you will never know where it's going to end.
For this group of people, inclusivity and cooperation is what is needed to overcome challenges. As such, they appealed for unified effort towards a better future for all Nigerians. In Maiduguri for News Central, Umaru Kirawa.
Still on the proposed protests, the leadership of the non-indigenous community in Delta State have distanced themselves from the 10-day nationwide protests billed for August 1st across the country. The non-indigenous, comprising of Hausa Fulani, Yoruba, Igbo, Idoma, Tiv, Edo, and others, said after a careful review of the planned protest, they have directed their members not to be part of it. At a press conference in Asaba on Tuesday, the group in a communique said their position is based on their belief that the proposed protest would worsen the nation's economy like the hashtag #EndSARS protests.
Community of indigenes in Delta State a communique reached by executive members of the non-indigenous community of Delta State, asking our members not to participate in the planned national protest slated for 1st August 2024. The executive members of the non-indigenous community in Delta State, comprising but not limited to the Hausas, Fulani, the Yorubas, the Igbos, the Idoma, Tifi, Edo, and others, reviewed the decision by a cross-section of Nigerians, especially youth, to embark on a 10-day nationwide protest starting from 1st of August 2024. After a careful review, the non-indigenous community executive agreed that while there is actually economic hardship in the country, it was actually a global issue which responsible government have been addressing. The non-indigenous community executive also believed that another round of protests after the last NSAS, the NSAS protests, will actually worsen the precarious economic and security situation being witnessed in the country.
Welcome back and thank you for staying with us. The federal government of Nigeria, through the Ministry of Education, has announced a 12.7% cut in allowances for Nigerian students on scholarship in foreign countries, including Russia, Morocco, and Algeria. The move is attributed to economic challenges. Now, this decision affects students under the bilateral education agreement scholarship who have already been struggling with unpaid stipends for 8 months. The scholarship, supervised by the Federal Scholarship Board, aims to promote education exchange between Nigeria and partner countries. Now, according to a memo from the Federal Scholarship Board, the cuts include a reduction in monthly allowances from $500 to $220, graduation allowances from $250 to $2,000, and PG research allowances from $1,000 to $500. Let's also tell you that economists and business owners have lamented that the recent interest rate increase by the Central Bank of Nigeria would have negative effects on businesses in the country. Their reactions came on the heels of CBN's consecutive increase of interest rates when the Monetary Policy Committee of the Apex Bank on Tuesday met. At the meeting, the CBN raised the monetary policy rate by 50 basis points from 26.25% to 26.75% in response to soaring inflation and skyrocketing food prices. The MPC also set the cash reserve ratio for deposit money banks at 45%, while merchant banks will see their CRR adjusted to 14%. The liquidity ratio has also been set to 30%. The MPC meeting is convened to assess the country's economic and financial conditions and to determine the appropriate monetary policy direction for the short to medium term.
The committee's decisions are as follows. Raise the MPR by 50 basis points to 26.75% from 26.25%. From 26.75% from 26.25%. Adjusted the asymmetric corridor around the MPR from plus 100 to minus 300 to plus 500 to 100 basis points. Retain the cash reserve ratio of deposit money banks at 45% and merchant banks at 14%, and retain the liquidity ratio at 30%. Okay, ultimately, if we're doing all the things we're doing and we're not able to impact the mind on the street, ultimately, then what do we really say we've been doing? And I think sometimes when people look at figures too often, they may lose track of that. And that is why I said what I said, that it is so important that we continue to bear that in mind, that our policies must ultimately impact the man on the street.
Earlier, we were joined by Chief Economist, ARKK Economics and Data Limited, Samson Simon, to discuss more on this.
It's only trial for the existence of the central bank is price stability, is to protect the purchasing power of everybody, whether businesses or individuals. And what they're trying to do by hiking interest rates is to reduce the amount of liquidity within the economy. And now that they've increased it, people will be discouraged to borrow. So there will be less spending. And when you have less spending, that will ultimately impact on inflation rate. And we know our inflation is beyond crazy. At 34.19 is completely off target. The ideal for Nigeria is 6 to 9%. Globally, the ideal is even 2%. And we're doing 34.19% official figures. Some authorities even have some figures that are way higher. So everything must be done to bring price back to target.
House of Representatives on Tuesday called for the suspension of the chief executive of the Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Authority, Farouk Ahmed, pending conclusive investigations into the allegations against the authority. Now, this followed the adoption of a motion of urgent public importance by Representative Esosa Iyawe, moved during plenary in Abuja. Moving the motion, Iyawe noted that the fuel quality can impact engine hardware. Thus, ultra-low sulfur diesel is recommended for all types of companies, power plants, storage tanks, industrial facilities, fleets and heavy equipment, and even ships, as high sulfur content in fuels causes damage to engines and contributes to air pollution. He said, considering the various risks associated with sulfur, governments around the world have taken steps to regulate it by setting standards that require maximum reduction of emissions of the chemical compound, which diesel producers are expected to adhere. Nigeria's Competition and Consumer Protection Commission has revealed that poor service delivery by electricity distribution companies tops the list of the complaints received by the Commission, surpassing all other categories. Now, this disclosure was made during a media briefing in Abuja, where the Commission shared highlights of its activities over the past 7 months. News Central's Joshua Marai completes the story.
Consumer Protection. The Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission has revealed that subpar service delivery by electricity distribution companies remains the most prevalent amongst complaints received by the Commission over the years. At a press briefing in Abuja, the acting executive vice chairman of the Commission announced that the FCCPC has launched initiatives to enhance transparency and accountability in the sector, addressing the long-standing issues plaguing consumers.
Consequently, complaints about poor service delivery by electricity distribution companies, this discourse, are by far the highest category of complaints received by FCCPC. The most common consumer complaints in the industry include exploitative billing, unlawful disconnection, non-metering of consumers, lack of transformers, and other salient issues.
The acting executive vice chairman says that the Commission conducted major reviews to prevent anti-competitive practices, protecting consumer choices by stopping large companies from unfairly acquiring smaller rivals.
The Commission conducted a series of major reviews to prevent anti-competitive practices in mergers and acquisitions, helping to preserve consumer choices by preventing large companies from unnecessarily acquiring smaller competitors and restricting options. From inception, the Commission has received a total of 294 transactions, out of which 22 were approved in 2024, while 8 applications are currently being reviewed.
He says that the $200 million fine imposed on Meta Platforms Incorporated, also owners of Facebook and WhatsApp, was due to discriminatory practices and sanctionable offenses uncovered during a 3-year intensive investigation. In Abuja for News Central, I am Joshua Imarai.
The Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, Nyesom Wike, has expressed dissatisfaction at the performance of the contractor handling the Karshi Apo Road project. The minister, during an inspection tour of the project, says that the inability of the contractors to complete the project within the last 13 years is unacceptable and a clear proof of their incompetence.
It was a heated argument with contractors handling the construction of the Karshi Apo Road in Abuja as senior officials of the Federal Capital Territory Administration, led by the minister, visited a 13-year-old project.
Anybody coming from here will know that you need a serious company.
Which is we did, sir.
No.
The report
that's why you cannot. You can't finish this one for years now.
No, sir.
This one was awarded when?
No, we did it, sir.
It was awarded when?
2011.
2011.
Yes.
While the minister Nyesom Wike expressed his displeasure over the inability of the contractors to complete the project, the contractors tried to defend their performance.
The one we bidded for fully was Karshi Ara, but because we were on ground, Karshi Apo was given to us as an addendum.
Additional work, as additional job.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
So they applied the rate, and it's because it was given as an addendum. I believe that's why the engineering details, the designs, were not properly done before the award.
And the road is not, and the money has been paid, and look at the road.
No,
sir. We have not gotten to weddings from here, sir. From here is scarification. This place has been existing. Our work starts from the first bridge to be rehabilitated. From that bridge.
So the contract starts from here.
Yeah, this is 00. But this one is just to scarify the existing asphalt. This one has been here for ages. It's just to remove this one, regulate the sub-base, do stone base, and the asphalt.
The FCT minister says that the contractors have performed poorly, but blamed past political leaders for playing politics with the contract.
It's unfortunate, very, very unfortunate. For 13 good years, this road has been abandoned. And I want to say clearly that part of the problem we have here is politics. Everything we politicize, and that is why the development cannot get quickly to our people.
The minister assured residents of the area that the FCT administration will do all it can to ensure that the road project is completed in the next 7 months. In Abuja for News Central, I am Amadine Uyi.
Stakeholders in Abuja have called on the federal government to establish a comprehensive methane emission reduction strategy, saying it will unlock the nation's vast natural resources. Now, this was during a recent multi-stakeholder dialogue in Abuja, which focused on strengthening methane emission reduction strategies in Nigeria's gas expansion plans. News Central's Joshua Imarai completes the story.
It was a gathering of government officials and industry experts who converged to discuss strategies aimed at reducing Nigeria's methane footprint, crucial for aligning with international climate goals. Stakeholders at the gathering say immediate action is needed to prevent increasing methane emissions from the nation's oil and gas sector, especially as government aims to expand domestic gas use and export.
Energy transition comes with a lot of risks and opportunities. But for us as a country that depends heavily on oil and gas revenue for survival, we are more concerned of how to manage these risks, mitigate the risks, and then maximize the opportunities. But now we are focusing on identifying those risks, finding solutions, and control of emissions.
There's a national gas policy, but it doesn't accommodate any transition components. Decade of Gas doesn't do that as well, around methane emissions reduction. So we need to see that synergy between all the different institutions, government institutions that are leading on these issues. So more collaboration to ensure that Nigeria is able to holistically reduce the methane emissions and achieve its climate goals, but also ensure that it's adopting policies that also benefit its citizens.
Stakeholders at the event emphasized the need for widespread education on methane emissions and their impacts urging Nigerians to effectively monitor and understand methane emissions reduction strategies.
The idea is to ensure that methane emission reduction strategy is driven by knowledge, that everybody gets to know what it is so that they are able to track what if Nigeria is on track, in its methane emission reduction strategy. So we are very optimistic that this dialogue would, of course, with a lot of experts and subject matter experts here today, has broadened the minds and the knowledge base of participants, and hopeful that this would also improve the way they carry on this work in their various offices and institutions.
Climate advocates at the gathering urged the government to forge partnership with the private sector and other stakeholders to develop and implement clear-cut strategies, ensuring swift action and robust enforcement to enhance Nigeria's methane reduction efforts before the window of opportunity closes. In Abuja for News Central, I am Joshua Imarayi.
Now let's head to South Africa, where Nigerians in South Africa are protesting outside Boksburg Court in Johannesburg, demanding justice for a Nigerian who was killed in 2023 and also torturing Onyedikachi Iroka to coma. Now the 4 Boksburg North police officers are back in the dock at the Magistrates Court for trial. They were arrested by the Independent Police Investigative Directorate in connection with 2 separate incidents. According to the IPID spokesperson, that's the spokesperson of the IPID, Lizzie Supping, the 4 were initially charged with assault with the intent to do grievous bodily harm and defeating the ends of justice. Earlier, our South African correspondent Bongani Siziba spoke to some Nigerians on the development.
We are here for the brutality against Nigerians, the killing against Nigerians. So we are not happy. That is why we are here. And justice must be done for us to cover us, because we are law-abiding citizens. We are here lawfully. We have our documents. We do our businesses. So they must protect us. Thank you.
I don't have much view and much to say. Like my brother said, the law mistake is on. The South African laws must treat Nigerians according to the way their laws is. We are here on the court today, and unfortunately they postponed the case. We are waiting for the next time we are appearing on the court to see how the case will go forward.
In Central Africa, Portugal's Prime Minister Luis Montenegro has increased a credit line to Angola, vowing to build new momentum in bilateral relations during a visit to the African countries. Montenegro met with Angolan President João Lourenço in the capital Luanda as part of a 3-day trip to the oil-rich former Portuguese colony. After talks at the presidential palace, the pair signed 12 cooperation agreements on topics ranging from economy to professional training and education. Montenegro, who took office in March, said a credit line that Angola can access to hire Portuguese firms to work in the country will be increased from 2 billion euros to 2.5 billion euros.
Vista da nossa relação económica, o anúncio que fiz do aumento em 500 milhões de euros da linha de crédito Portugal-Angola é também uma expressão daquilo que é o contributo de Portugal para a criação de infraestruturas elementares e decisivas para alavancar o futuro de Angola.
Em termos vigorosos, e impedir-nos a exigir a implementação das resoluções do Conselho de Segurança das Nações Unidas, que apontam para a necessidade da criação do Estado da Palestina, numa solução de todos os Estados soberanos, vizinhos a viver.
In East Africa, Tanzania President Samia Suluhu Hassan has fired 2 senior ministers, including the head of the Foreign Ministry, in a mini cabinet reshuffle. The move comes ahead of expected national elections next year, with the sacked information minister caught in a viral video last week saying winning in elections is not always determined by the number of votes in the ballot box. Mahmoud Tabit Kombo has been appointed a member of parliament and the new Minister for Foreign Affairs and East African Cooperation to replace January Makamba, whose appointment is revoked. Jerry Sila, previously Lands, Housing and Settlement Development, was appointed to replace Nape Nauye, Minister for Information, Communications and IT. Still ahead. On World Wrap, the United Kingdom Prime Minister Keir Starmer faces his first House of Commons grilling on Wednesday after suspending 7 of his own Labour MPs for rebelling over a controversial welfare policy. Starmer suspended the Labour rebels late Tuesday after they backed a motion demanding the removal of the contentious 2-child limit on benefits introduced by the previous Conservative government. Their votes supporting ending the cap introduced in 2015 and which restricts payments to the first 2 children born to most families is an early test of Starmer's authority. Starmer's decision to suspend the whip from the group of left-wingers, which included former finance spokesman John McDonnell, was seen as a show of ruthlessness from his new administration. Sad news from Nepal, where a passenger plane carrying 19 people crashed during takeoff earlier today. The pilot has survived, but many others on board are feared dead. A Sauria Airlines flight was carrying 17 staff members and 2 crew when it crashed at around 11:15 a.m. local time. The plane was conducting a technical or maintenance flight, but details are still sketchy. Images from the scene show the plane's fuselage split apart and burned, with soldiers assisting in rescue efforts. The cause of the crash is still unknown, but reports suggest that the plane caught fire after skidding on the runway. Relentless rain drenched the northern Philippines on Wednesday, triggering floods in Manila and landslides in mountainous regions as Typhoon Gami intensified the seasonal monsoon. In the densely populated capital, rescuers were deployed across the city to help evacuate people from low-lying homes after downpours turned streets into rivers, trapping vehicles also. Now, people clutched flimsy umbrellas as they waded through thick or thigh-deep murky water or used small boats and shopping trolleys to move around. Government offices were shut and classes suspended. At least 80 domestic and international flights were cancelled, while tens of thousands of customers lost power because of the weather. In the world of sports, Nigeria's trio of Olajide Omotayo, Ofyong Edem and Fatima Bello will know their first-round opponents today at the official draw for the table tennis competitions of the Paris 2024 Olympic Games before the events kick off on July 27th at South Paris Arena. A total of 172 players, 86 in men's and 86 in women's category, will compete across 5 medal events, 2 per gender and a mixed, at the Paris Olympic Games, while Omotayo, who will be making his second appearance at the Games, will start his campaign from the preliminary rounds of the men's singles. Like Omotayo, Edem, who is making her 5th Olympic Games appearance, as well as debutante Bello, will also start their participation in the preliminary rounds of the men's singles. As one of the top 16 seeds, Quadri Aruna will commence his 5th Olympic Games campaign from round of 64, which will commence on July 28. As the Olympics kick off, fans in France are showing a lack of enthusiasm. And despite the grandeur and excitement surrounding the global event, local supporters seem less thrilled about the commencement of the Games. Organizers are hopeful that the spirit will pick up as the event progresses. Over 10,000 athletes are expected to take part, with all hoping to achieve the performance that will earn them a lifelong path to glory.
Non, je n'étais pas au courant. Je savais qu'il y avait les JO qui allaient commencer, mais je ne savais pas qu'ils commençaient demain à Marseille.
J'ai essayé de faire la déco comme moi je l'entendais, pour faire une petite fan zone, puisqu'on est en face de la marina, hein, bien sûr. Et donc, on va essayer d'attirer le maximum de clients pour pouvoir subvenir à tout le désarroi qu'ils nous ont fait pendant 2 ans et demi, 3 ans.
Still talking sports, the International Olympic Committee on Wednesday awarded the 2030 Winter Games to the French Alps, but under the condition that France gives financial commitments. The decision came after President Emmanuel Macron told IOC members he would ask France's next Prime Minister to give a financial guarantee for hosting the Games. France is the only candidate to host the Games, but the funding has been in question because there is no government in place following inconclusive snap elections. But Macron told IOC members in Paris he would ask the Prime Minister who emerges from the ongoing talks to form a new government to make a financial commitment and also create an Olympic law.
In front of you today, I want to confirm my full commitment and the full commitment of the French nation. And I assure you that I will ask the next Prime Minister to include not only this guarantee, but also an Olympic law in the priorities of the new government. 7 years ago, I took the same commitment, and we delivered. And we passed 2 Olympic laws in order precisely to accelerate and deliver the full agenda. And as you can see today, we are all united. We are all committed to make this bid a huge success. And I speak in front of you with, I do believe, the credibility of a whole team who committed 7 years ago and who delivered.
That's all at this hour. But before we go, let's take another look at some of our major stories. You heard that government is seeking to avert planned protests, holds emergency meeting today to address concerns. You also heard that stakeholders have warned that interest rates hike will have negative ripples on Nigeria's economy. Finally, we told you that Tanzania's president has fired 2 top ministers ahead of elections. Send your eyewitness report to the WhatsApp number on the screen. Do you follow us on social media? We are at News Central TV. You can watch News Central live on DSTV channel 422, Star Times channel 274, Avo TV, and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I'm Dashen, Usman.